Okay, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. It is 7 o'clock, so it is time to kick this Farminar off. So I'm Steve Carlson. Like I said there in the chat box, I'm a staff member here at Practical Farmers of Iowa. I am broadcasting across the World Wide Web, the interwebs, from here at the PFI office in Ames, Iowa. And if you'd like to share where you're tuning in from, that's always fun to see. I know our presenters tonight are from northeastern Kansas. I think you probably know what you're here for, but yeah, tonight we've got John and his son Ian Stigge, who farm in northeastern Kansas, and they do about 2,000 acres of no-till cover crops, corn and beans and cattle, and we're going to hear a little bit about this term graze cropping and other practices that they use to integrate cattle and crops on their farm. So this would be a good presentation tonight on profitably integrating livestock and cover crops. And so this, this is part of Practical Farmers of Iowa's Farminar series. So I'm going to talk a little bit about PFI and our Farminars before I let these guys take it over. So we've been doing this for about a month yet this year. This is part of our Fall Farminar series. And next week we have one more topic before we take a break for Christmas and New Year's. And so next week on December 19th, we're going to continue this same topic, and we'll hear from farmers in Nebraska who are also integrating cattle and cover crops profitably, and we'll hear about the on-farm research that they've done over in Nebraska. So if you're tuning in tonight and you're curious about this topic, then come back next Tuesday. We always do these at 7 o'clock on Tuesday nights during the fall and winter months. And so after a short break then, following next week's presentation, we'll be back in January with another 9 or 10 topics that'll carry us from January and February into March. And so if you put your email address in that chat box, I'll shoot you an email at the end of the year with the full list of topics to come in the new year. And we're looking for feedback always from you guys about what kind of topics you want to listen to. So I'm going to put up a link in the chat box a little bit later to take a survey about tonight's Farminar, and then also that's your chance to tell us what topics you want to hear about in the future, and we take that seriously. So definitely let us know what you want to learn about, and we'll try and provide programming for it. If you do miss any of our Farminars, there's a link right there to our archive. We have over 130 archived Farminars on our website, and we're recording this one tonight. So if you want to go back and revisit this presentation tonight, you can find that on the website. And so Practical Farmers of Iowa, if you're not familiar, is a nonprofit organization, and we've been around for over 30 years now. We're a farmer-led organization and member-based, and we like to consider ourselves a big tent. We welcome farms of all sizes, farms from all enterprises, and not just in Iowa either. We have members all over the Midwest and far beyond the Midwest as well. So encourage you to join Practical Farmers of Iowa. Our mission at PFI is strengthening farms and communities through farmer-led investigation and information sharing. And we use our mission to help farmers practice an agriculture that benefits the land and the people. And we achieve our mission in a number of ways. One of the main ways we do this is through on-farm research, our cooperators program. And through our cooperators program, we help farmers design and implement replicated on-farm research trials on whatever issues that they're curious about. So just last week, we had our annual cooperators meeting where our on-farm researchers all got together and discussed the research trials that they conducted over the past year or several years, and brainstormed what things they want to research on their farm this coming year. And this has been a real core tenet of Practical Farmers of Iowa. It's on-farm investigation, and then we take that information that we find through our on-farm research trials, and we help farmers share those through a variety of ways. This is one of those ways, our Farminars right here. We also do on-farm field days in the rest of the season when in Iowa, between pretty much May and November, we do on-farm field days. And then another thing that we do that I want to mention in particular is our annual conference that's coming up in Ames, January 18th, 19th, and 20th. You can go to that website right there, pficonference.org, to get all the details on that. It's super affordable. We have well over 50 sessions and tons of activities. And again, it's a great representative of PFI. It's a big tent. We have a lot of horticulture focused topics. We have organic topics. We have conventional topics, livestock, row crops, cover crops, small grains, farm transition. We've got a whole lot of stuff planned for that conference. So I encourage you to check it out, get signed up, and join us in Ames. And as I mentioned, we are a member-based organization, so you should join PFI if it really is something that you feel passionate about. You can see a list of benefits that members get, but really one of the main benefits for being a Practical Farmers of Iowa member is the rest of you. It's joining the network of people who want to see a sustainable agriculture across the landscape, and it's a network of people who want to share information about improving profitability and improving stewardship and efficiency. So if you join PFI, you get a lot of great benefits, and you can tap into this network of really cool farmers who like to do the same kinds of things. So then real quick, real basic rules for the Farminars. Please be respectful of our speakers, be respectful of other people in the chat box. We encourage you to ask questions, and you can do that in the chat box there. Go ahead and type your questions in. Try and keep them focused and on topic so we don't derail the conversation. But John and Ian are going to talk for, to carry us up till about 8 o'clock, maybe an hour or so, and then we'll have time for all other questions after that. And you can type your questions in the chat box at any time. If they see your question and they want to answer it, they'll do that. Otherwise, I'll make sure that we circle back at the end of the presentation and get your questions answered that might have been missed. Then one more plug for that survey. That link on the screen right there is just asking for a little bit of feedback about tonight's presentation, and then let us know what topics you want to hear about in the future. I'll post that link in the chat box a little later, but it's a live link, so you can click on it now and then sit on it until after the presentation. You can take it then. So we really appreciate your feedback. We take it seriously. So that's all I got to say. I'm going to get out of the way. John and Ian, I'm going to pull up your presentation now, and when you guys see that, feel free to flip on your mic and take it over. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
I want to start with what we're doing is transformational farming. We believe that things have to change, and on our farm 40 years ago, our soil organic matter was below 1% on half our farms, and right now we've got it up there between 2.5% to over 3%. And most of that's come within the last 10 years. Our water infiltration rates was about 0.6 of an inch when we applied irrigation. Now we can accept a 4.5-inch rainfall with no runoff. We have had no needs for insecticides or herbicides for over 10 years. And our soil tests show that the only need for added nutrients is nitrogen. And we'll discuss a little bit about how we're able to accomplish that. When we were seeing change over the last few years, we could see that the herbicides were losing their ability to control weeds. We could see problems with the new dicamba coming on, and it some industry experts were saying that because of the drift onto other fields, we'll have a dicamba resistance within 3 years over a wide scale. Our costs kept escalating. They went up when corn prices went up, but they just haven't wanted to come down. And we were noticing, that we could hear consumers not wanting to, they're interested in things like organic beef, organic fruits and vegetables. They wanted grass-fed beef. They weren't trusting. And, initially we gathered circle the wagons and, think, well, those people just don't know what they want. But then we kind of listened. And we investigated, and, one of the reports I saw was a Mayo Clinic test. It was, they pulled blood samples from 1948 to 1956. And they did it again just within the last few years. And what they found was that the youth of today are 4.5 times more likely to have celiac disease, an autoimmune disease. There's a lot of things that, we thought was right with agriculture, but when we looked closer, hey, we needed to do some work. So we decided to go ahead and take some action steps.
After seeing all that, we kind of decided it was time for a change, and we went to, her dad always goes to, and I tag along occasionally to, all sorts of seminars and whatnot, and listen to a whole bunch of different people talk, and try to get an idea of stuff that other people were doing that was working and wasn't working, and kind of got out there a little bit, and where we got our information from. We tried to keep our minds open, but still kind of try and think critically about stuff. And we gathered a lot of information. This wasn't a quick change. This was a few years it took to kind of decide where we were going to go. The short of it is, we came up with 2 goals: to have healthy soils and produce healthy, nutrient-dense food. Reasoning behind the healthy soils is, if we don't have a healthy ecosystem under our feet, there's not going to be anything good transferred up to any plant material, to to any corn or a cow or what have you, because ecosystems are cyclic. Like, that's kind of a simplified version of it, but it passes on whatever's going on down there on upwards to us.
When we did this, we made a plan. And making the plan was kind of tough, and it took us over a year. Ian and went out to a conference out in Ogallala, Nebraska, and he come back and said, I want to go organic. And I go to the National No-Till Conference every year, and 10, 12 years ago, that subject was brought up at roundtable discussions, and the consensus was it can't be done and practice no tillage of the soil. 2 years ago, we had another roundtable discussion, and it was, well, we think we can get this. We think we can do this. Last year, it was, this is what we are doing. And I guess we look back on agriculture and we saw that when, 100, 150 years ago, the horsepower was the horses, the mules. And a lot of the ground was planted, to oats, to hay. And we had this ecosystem that was kind of kept in balance. And, even that now, we're seeing the problems that's occurred from, getting away from that. And so our plan we needed to find a way to have good, healthy soils, and we needed to find a way to provide a healthy food source for our consumers. Our consumers are our customers. So the plan we made was and we had been using livestock, and we could see the benefits that we were having by utilizing the livestock. And I think one of the first times we had a farm that is in wheat, and I planted triticale and the daikon radish to help break things up. And we grazed half of that, and the other half we did not graze. Where we grazed, the soil was mellower. When we went from where we had grazed to where we had not grazed, it pulled our no-till planter down. You could hear it. Luke was in the planter. He could feel it. And since then, we've seen the benefits that come. And nobody knows what those benefits are. I've heard a lot of conjecture, but nobody really knows, why. Dr. Chris Nichols said that she doesn't even know how to go about doing the research. But livestock, and for us, we're using cattle, and it doesn't have to be just cattle, but that's what we're using because we're familiar with it.
Yeah, so on that, you can this is kind of like a small glimpse into kind of what we're doing with cattle. This is a quarter of dry land that we've had out of crop production for decent 3 years.
2 years.
2 years, yeah, and yeah, we got it. Our cattle were on this for an entire year here, rotationally grazed, spring through fall.
There's 126 pair. I'm sorry, 126 acres. Carried 91 pair from the 11th of April to in November. So but we overgrazed. We have to learn our lessons too.
Just a sec, I'm lost here.
What we are looking to do, what we decided to do was two things. We were going to produce, as a way to make money, we're going to produce a nutrient-dense organic grain, and we were going to field finish nutrient-dense beef. Um, Ian alluded to it earlier that the soil has to be healthy. And I've heard several soil scientists talking about the need to have good healthy soils. For us, it has shown a when we take our corn in to the elevator, it always runs between 60 and 64 pounds per bushel. It's heavier than everybody else's. And I didn't realize this until one time when I was anxious to get back to the field, and I noticed them slowing down the machine. And I asked Damon, I said, why are you doing that? And he says, your corn's too heavy. You don't want me to plug the leg, do you? And that was just an indicator that we were onto something, that we were, but we now believe, when talking with other scientists, that, food is not just calories and fiber and vitamins and minerals. It's energy that affects all parts of our body, like our nervous system, our immune system, our brain chemistry, our all aspects of us. And I believe that's what subconsciously, maybe the American consumer has been realizing, hey, we're getting a lot of food, but maybe there's something missing. And this is what we're trying to do, is produce a nutrient-dense food. So these are our two goals here, just to provide that nutrient dense. And there's a Texas A&M study that has been ongoing for 20 years, and I'll just kind of throw this out here. It's been showing a steady they've been taking samples of the manure, and over the past 20 years, there's been a steady decline in the nutrients in that manure. So this is telling me we need to address our whole methodology of agriculture and start to look at what better ways to do this. But these are the two things that we're trying to produce: is organic, nutrient-dense grain and organic, farm-finished, grass-fed, nutrient-dense beef.
And let's see, I guess, yeah. Yeah, so just part of my reasoning for telling Dad that we should go organic is just how that market has been growing. Like, consumers speak with their pocketbooks, and they have really spoken. Since 2000, the organic food sales in the United States have averaged a 15% growth per year. And between 2012 and 16, both organic and non-organic grass-fed beef sales in the U.S. doubled every year. And here in the States, we still import a lot of grass-fed beef. So there's money out there to be had, and it's making money with a clean conscience, I guess. And so the way we like to kind of talk about is farm regeneratively. Spraying weeds and tilling the ground and applying fertilizer is just kind of an attempt to control nature, and nature will win every time. So instead of seeing a patch of weeds as a disease, we look at it as a symptom, and we go in and we plant a different cover, graze a bit differently. Sometimes we get surprised. One year we had to bale feed our cow-calf herd, and during the summer we had some problems, and they were on this one patch for quite a while, and we kind of thought, oh hell, we really screwed up this time. And next spring it was like a carpet of grass there, like in an area where that used to have a lot of pigweeds in it. And if we see a bug problem, we add variety. That's something that we've heard other people try, and we think it works. We never ever have just one thing growing out there. It's always a mix. Like, monoculture is not productive. It's not productive for the earth, and it's not productive for us. So in short, we kind of see problems arise when we take more from the environment than we put back.
Well, we want to farm with nature. Nature's been around for millions and millions of years, and it's perfected a methodology for creating an ecosystem that keeps the ground covered. In case of all these catastrophic events like volcanoes, tornadoes, fires, earthquakes, it has a way to fairly rapidly heal the ground, get it covered, and get something growing. And if you look at the nature, there's always got something growing unless man screws it up. And so we're trying to farm with nature and not look at it as being our enemy. We use graze cropping and organic farming to facilitate each other. We believe graze cropping is, having livestock out there, getting that, getting whatever that is to improve the soil microbiology. And we have to have a great microbiology, or we just cannot have a good functioning system. But we think they work together, and it isn't something we weren't. We weren't going to do a lot of the. We were doing a lot of the graze cropping, but the organic farming is a way for us to, to kind of break into that, to break some of the cycles up there.
And so this is kind of our plan. We nutritionally graze farms for a year and a half, so we take them out of cash crop production, and that, the ground is never ever bare. There's always going to be something there. That's something that we kind of swear by. And we rotationally graze spring through fall. In the wintertime, we'll subdivide up into, kind of quarter up a field, and just to keep things a bit steadier. And our animals don't really need antibiotics. Occasionally we'll have some sickness and stuff, but the our cattle respond better to the mixtures and of cover crops that we have out there. And you know, we keep a close eye on the soil. You know, Dad's always out there with the spade digging down and checking root structure, and you know, we try to keep one step ahead, I guess. And so something we'd like to do for weed control is to put down organic mat crop. We did this year before last on a cornfield. We had oats down, and we put that down and planted right into it, and could not see any ground, but the corn came up through it, and it was pretty cool. It was nice. And we are contracting to graze finished beef at 1,200 pounds, and shooting for, you know, real good quality. And yeah, so if you look at where are the best soils in the world, you know, it's pasture. It's stuff where, you know, animals are, like, it's a habitat. It's not just a cornfield and what have you. So in this picture, you can you know, see poly wire we have here. That's what we use to rotationally graze. Just put it right on the perimeter hot wire, and you know, cattle get trained to it pretty well, and they'll after they've eaten half of it down, we let them onto the next patch, and you know, that way we keep our cover growing. So we always, like, the soil is always, there's activity underneath. Not only does that help the soil, but it gives the cattle a constant and consistent supply of nutrition and forage. And you know, they're not just going through the whole field and picking out whatever's tastes best. They're getting, how would you say, like
they're getting a balanced diet.
yeah, exactly. We're getting a balanced diet. And doing it, you know, rotationally grazing cattle like this, that's how we fertilize. You know, we take a look at a field before we stick anything out there, and we see how things are growing, and we look at the forecast and see what the weather outlook's going to be like, you know, like a month down the road, and we adjust our paddocks to fit all of that. We say we can have this number of head in this paddock and for this long, and then we take them off. Most of the time, if you know, there's been some times where we have kind of grubbed things, and it
always bites us in the ass when it happens.
Yeah, real bad.
Over the years, we have learned the necessity to have balanced cover crops. Here you have a good mixture down there of annual ryegrass, some peas, some clover, you know, some crimson clover in there. But what I came up with over the years was a power of 3. And what that is using a brassica, at least one brassica, at least one plant out of the grass family and one out of the legume family. Brassicas. Now, these are, everybody knows about the tillage radish. That is a brassica. Your brassicas include, your mustards, your, a whole wide variety of things like your turnips. This here is a mustard, and this is a mistake. This was a new plant that just come out. It was called shield broadleaf mustard, and I put it with a mix, and it grew so fast. This is just a half pound of mustard out there, and it completely ruined the grazing on 2 farms. But it does have its, brassicas have its drawbacks. Now, the one thing you need to realize with them is those root hairs on the brassica plants exude acids, which strip the calcium away from the phosphorus and sulfur and the other minerals, and it allows those minerals all to be utilized by the plants. If they're not utilized, they're going to be, they're free, they're not tied up in the soil, and they can be just like nitrogen. They can move on down. But what's exciting is most all of our soils have the nutrients in there to last. Scientists have said hundreds and sometimes thousands of years. We have not had, we soil test every year. Our soil tests have shown we do not need to apply phosphorus. We do not need to apply sulfur. Potassium, no. Even our zinc, we've shown lower levels of needing for that. It brings it down to where it's not necessary to put it down. But that's something that the brassicas do. It frees up those nutrients in there. Go back. It also, if you dig up a brassica plant root, you're going to find a very healthy, vibrant soil microbiological community down there. You're going to see there's a lot of soil aggregation going on. You'll see a lot of more earthworms around brassica plants. One caution, well, 2 cautions I'm going to give you. First of all, turnips and radish are tubers. These tubers, if cattle or sheep or something do not eat them, they're going to decay. And I thought for a while, I used them quite a bit, but then I began to think, gosh, this smell that comes from the radish decaying, I'm wondering if I'm losing nitrogen, because brassicas are exceptional scavengers. And I was talking to from Ohio State, Jim. I can't think of his last name now, but he did a lot of the research there on Lake Erie, and I just broached with him about the fact that I thought I was losing nitrogen, and because I could have that smell, and he brought up, he says, "Oh, you're using the nitrogen, but you're not smelling that. The smell that's coming from that decay is the sulfur that's going into the air." So that's something you need to be aware of. If you plant a a radish or a turnip, you need to have it grazed, or you just lost all that energy, all that nutrients that you gathered together. And brassicas, don't plant any more than 2 pounds per acre in a mix. Most of them just a pound. Legumes are going to be the most expensive part of any mix. And I tried for years to get by without using them because I wanted to keep my costs down. But I wasn't getting the results that I saw some other people were getting. And so upon studying, I found that the legume roots leak exudates that attract the rhizobium bacteria and mycorrhizal fungi. The legume will scavenge all the nitrogen it can from around its roots, but as soon as it starts to need more nitrogen than it can get from the soil, it gives out this sugary exudate that actually invites the rhizobium bacteria to enter into its into its cell root, and gives it room and board, lets it build up its nodule, and that's how it gets its nitrogen. I think everybody's heard about mycorrhizal fungi, and there's a reason for that. There's thousands of different fungi, but we found that the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi has 3 main things that it does. And first thing, it boosts photosynthesis. It makes things more drought resistant. Some scientists say that if you don't till the ground, it makes even the next crop a little more drought resistant. Those fine white threads that are around those plants are that fungi, and what they does is that it transports the nutrients from distances away. It will actually transfer between plants to plants. It's pretty neat when you listen to how it's done. And the third thing is it forms glomalin. And glomalin is the glue that aggregates soil particles together. There's where you get your water infiltration, your aeration. And grasses, they're the big carbon builders. They build soil organic matter, but don't look for the soil organic matter to be built from above the ground. It's the roots where you get the biggest buildup of soil organic matter, and that's one reason why if you're able to have a good annual ryegrass in there, there's nothing that can boost your soil organic matter up faster than annual ryegrass, a good annual ryegrass.
Okay. Yeah, so I talked just a bit ago about rotational grazing or graze cropping. So graze cropping is just, like I said before, it's taking a field out of cash crop production and inserting livestock in there to, diversify cycles.
The thing with rotational grazing, when we're able to get animals on a small confinement, especially like your beef animals, University of Missouri did some research. They put, long story short, they found that they measured where cows urinated using GPS devices, and they found where the cow urinated the nitrogen levels were 1,200 parts per million. Where it didn't urinate, it was 23 parts per million. So if we're able to spread, have each place get their shall we say, urine bath once a year, we've got a high concentration of nitrogen, and that's part of one of the reasons why we rotationally graze. We have such small paddocks. One thing we want to do is to seed annuals. Annuals are high energy, and it's real important that we harvest the energy. We try and seed at least twice annually. Down here we can seed 3 times annually, and they may sound, wow, that's a lot of money, but we're harvesting that as we go along. We use cool season annuals early, warm seasons late, and we use those seed blends as much as we can.
And we always make real sure to have running water close to our cattle constantly. Like, there's no way for me to stress that enough. We screwed around with hauling water for a few years, and I feel like we probably did some damage to certain parts of the field, and it cost a lot of money. Had a lot of flat tires, and we tried watering using our pivots, and that was just kind of wasteful. So what we have now is we had wells drilled in a few of our fields, and we have pressure tanks hooked up to all of them. About 1,000 feet of HDPE pipe buried underground, with an additional about 2,000 feet of the same pipe above ground, with quick coupler junctions like every 500 or 600 feet that we can hook a sprayer hose onto, which connects to our water tank, which just has a banjo quick coupler on it. We plug it into that. The water tank's on skids, so when it's time to move cattle to the next paddock, we just snap it off, chain the skids up to the Ranger, tow it to the next paddock, and it's simple, and it's so much easier, and you save money, and it's just very important, in short. We always make sure to have a livestock plan. Like we don't just dump whatever out onto whatever. When we have something growing, we say, like, we're gonna put 5 weights out for this long, or et cetera, et cetera. And so for implementing organic, really read over those requirements. There are a lot of them, and it's not something to screw up. And if you plan on having organic grain, you'll need to have storage facilities, because can't just take that into the co-op. It has to, for organic grain, you have to have a clean facility. Just same way with your machinery, your combine, your planter, your trucks, those all have to be cleaned if they've had conventional grain run through them. And we use cover crop borders for beneficial insects and to handle drift. We found that it's really important to talk with other people. People doing the work, like you folks and us, like, have the experience, like the hard experience with all this, and just know you can do it without tilling the ground. There's a way to do it.
For year one is a transition for us, and what we've done is we see the cool season mix early, like late February, early March. And it almost always has oats in it. And we're able to, we're a little farther south. We're able to start grazing some in April normally. And we will start seeding our summer mix after we're sure it's not going to be what's coming up is going to be will be hit by a frost. And we will have our spring graze, followed by a summer graze, and then we're able to put a fall graze or a fall spring graze if we want to put triticale out there, or annual ryegrass mixture, or we might dormant graze, where we'll put an oats mixture out there, things that'll die, and it'll be grazed over the winter. The cattle will be out there over the winter. The thing is, we want to make sure we're harvesting the light, because we have to. This is a soil building year. We have to get as much soil biological activity kicked up. We have to get as much nitrogen into the ground, as much carbon in built up into the soil again. Year two, we'll seed a spring graze, and again, we're going to graze as soon as possible, but we're going to finish grazing by August 1st, and I'm going to seed an oats, spring pea, probably a Naomi vetch in there. We'll have a brassica in there, of course, but something that's going to die, and will be, it will not overwinter. And then during the winter, we want to roll that down so we have a nice mat. Then year three, this is our first year of where we can have organic production. We will seed the corn in as early as possible into this mat. And we have to use a no or minimal disturbance planter. No row cleaners. We found that just your row openers, or double disc openers, is enough to slice through stuff and get that corn into the ground. We have been in 15-inch rows. Our plan is to go back to 30-inch rows and to interseed a companion crop in with that. And we don't know what's going to end up working. That's a work in progress. Where it may be Naomi woolly pod vetch, because it can start nodulating within 7 days of emergence from the ground. But you have to remember, it is a scavenger of nitrogen, so I don't want to take anything away from that any nitrogen away from that corn plant. Annual ryegrass has been proven to give quite a yield bump. We're also looking at the Bayou kale, Bayou kale cross. It is a good, we found that to be a good attractor of beneficial insects. And what all of those will do to keep the ground covered and and keep it cooler. You know, that's our thinking. Now, we may end up being found. You know, there might be some problems, and there's going to be some problems we're going to find out. But of course, we'll observe and then harvest. And year 4, we'll seed an organic cover crop early. Probably oats, probably a shorter oats, something that we can roll, something that will joint by early May. And then we'll seed soybeans in 15-inch rows. And hopefully, that thick mat, what the scientists have said is if we can have a thick mat of organic matter where the sunlight cannot get through, then the pigweed seeds cannot germinate. They have to have, one guy called it a flash of sunlight. We'll see. Year 5, we don't know. In the future, you know, like we said, it's to be determined. We don't know. This is all.
We didn't think we were going to be in where we are now 3 or 4 years ago. So
It's an exciting time in agriculture. And if you want to go, we will leave. This is kind of an example of our spring mix and our costs. Our summer graze mix and the costs. If you want to email, if you want to ask advice on it, you can sure email it, and we'll, shoot us an email, and we'll send back what we use and for you. And our email is STIGGEINC. Yeah, he'll put it on here. Stigge Inc.
the Blue Valley one.
At bluevalley.net. Okay, the question about the mustard. Shield broadleaf mustard is such a fast growing, I have never experienced anything as fast growing as that. And at half pound, it still amazes me that it overtook it that. But it is, we had a young man put this out in this last year in front of soybeans because mustard is reputed to have show benefits in front of soybeans for the soybean plant, and it didn't grow very tall because we were so cold up until we had such a cold spring. He left a test strip, and where he did not burn that, he did not burn that test strip down. He planted through it, and then when he where that test strip was, his soybeans were 2 to 3 inches taller than where the others weren't, and then he sprayed them and they all died. You know, the mustard died then, and the soybeans went, kept on growing. They didn't have an inch of rain all year. They were east of us. They're I'm not quite. I talked to his wife. I don't know exactly how, if they had any benefits to it or not, but that is just that's an animal that it's got a lot of potential, but not in a grazing mix. Please, not in a grazing mix.
Yep.
The TS7P is the only spring pea that I could get cattle to really eat. And the TS7 is an Australian pea. So that's why we use that. And the Bayou Kale Cross is, the cattle just love it. It's phenomenal. It's got a root structure that goes down, and it also has a vertical root. It's just an incredible plant.
Yeah, John and Ian, I'm just gonna butt in quick and just say thanks for all of this so far. I mean, we still got plenty of questions, so I want to encourage people to go ahead and put them in the chat box, and as you guys see them come in, feel free to answer them, or I can help dish them out. So looks like Bruce's question about if you do any actual tests to measure your soil health, that looks like a good topic to discuss real quick.
We have worked with NRCS measuring soil health, and currently we are hooking up to do to have our soil tested at Quorum Labs in El Dorado, Illinois. They do genomic testing. And it's an expensive test. It's when they combine that with the Haney test, it's going to run around, I think, $270. But the information you get out of it is incredible. They will not only tell you how many fungi and bacteria, what those balances are. You will get a report on the amounts of the different fungi, and it's just an incredible report. But yes, that's what we are doing. Road cleaners. 15 years ago, I was listening to a talk by Paul Yassa, University of Nebraska engineer. I'm not quite sure what his, but he showed that if you use road cleaners, you open back, actually you're moving stuff around, you get more weeds, and that's what we were finding. And I took my as soon as I listened to him, I took my road cleaners off, and I haven't had any problems with weeds coming up alongside the corn or the soybean anymore. We don't have, actually, you can barely see that we've planted. So we cut through all sorts of debris. So amount of rain. This year we had a normal rainfall. Most of that came within a 5-week period in the spring. We get on average about 32 inches of annual precipitation. We are setting up with Creekstone Farms out of Kansas City, Kansas. Now, we haven't sold them any yet. They have stringent requirements. no antibiotics, and that. Um, and that's been a disappointment for what we started. Did not meet the qualifications, so um, we haven't taken them on up there to the 1,200 pound weight. But by taking them up there to 1,200 pounds, by feeding them the annuals, we can get the energy into the animals to have them grade choice. We've seen this happen. So marketing, that's in progress. If you qualify on the grass-fed program, you can get, there is a wholesale market for that. But we just, like I said, we just have not been able to qualify. In the past, we had not qualified for that. The economics, that varies so much from year to year. We can actually gross more off of graze cropping than we can wheat and soybeans. Not corn. Well, it depends upon how much what the yields are. We don't have the great yields that you guys get up there, but our expenses are a lot lower with the graze cropping, but our labor costs are higher. So it's something. Boy, that's a variable, and I hate to go out and say, hey, you know, this is what we get all the time, because we don't. I mean, this year we didn't get any summer rains. It all makes a difference. How often do we test? Annually. I think we need to soil test every year. How much can we increase the soil organic matter in 1 year? Boy, that's there's a lot of us in the field that think that we can add 1% soil organic matter in 5 years. I don't know. There again, a lot of it's going to depend just on, on climate. You guys are a little bit colder. But we're pretty certain that we can boost it up 1% within 5 years, and a lot of guys are thinking, hey, we can do this within 3 years. And I think if you use annual ryegrass a lot, that's going to help. Nutritionally, the nutritional part of this is, I don't know if any of you've ever listened to Dr. Jill Clapperton. We're finding that if we can have healthy soils, more nutrition goes up into the plants. And by going into the plants, it goes into the animals. If we can't have good, healthy soil, we can't have, in the whole food chain, we can't have that nutrition. And I'm not certain we know what all the nutrition is. Just like 20 years ago, we didn't know glomalin was around. And the soil scientists can only test about 5%, in a Petri dish, 5% of the fungi and the bacteria that's in the soil. Yes. I just had a call from South Central Kansas. Gentleman had a 650-pound calf, was grazing on turnips, and it died. What did I think happened to it? And I said, check its throat. And he called today and says, damn, there was a turnip in there. We had that experience once, and we only graze cows on a turnip. Other crops, there is a vetch. Oh, it escapes my mind now. We haven't used it in like forever. It's, Kansas State put a bunch of information out saying that hairy vetch will kill animals. Well, hairy vetch will only, that's bullshit. That's just flat bullshit. And he wouldn't answer my email either. That perturbed me. But there are a few, like sedan grasses can be, if you get nitrate poison, prussic acid poisoning. There's some of those things you just have to be aware of, and be careful of that. Can we graze the annuals 2 times before reseeding? Yes and no. The first part, yes. As they get older and they're grazed down, especially your oats and some of those, you give up too much energy by not reseeding, and you give up too much time. It's something you'll have to kind of work with, but yeah, you can. Oh. Gabe Brown had invited me up several years ago to his farm, and he did research up there. And he showed they had it tested at where they grazed, where they did not graze, and where they grazed, they actually had this is over a 5-year period, I believe, if my memory serves it right. But it was like, and this is just measuring the nutrients, the normal measurable, your NPK. The grazing showed a significant dollar value improvement in the soil nutrient levels. And I don't have them in front of me. I've got them stored away in my file cabinet, and I look at them every so often, but I just...
What percent of cover do you graze should leave? Most of the time it's...
Boy, anywhere from half to, if we want to, we might leave it, we might graze it all off if we want to get in there to...
Like general rule of thumb is we graze half and leave half, unless we do let them eat it down. But if we let them eat it down, we have stuff already, like a different mixture, already in the ground before we let them do that. So
we're ready to seed.
Yeah, so that there's stuff just about to come up before that happens.
John and Ian, it looks like there was a question a little bit higher up that I'm not sure that you guys addressed. Bruce had asked, what do you figure that the livestock is worth in your system, and how do you try and put like a dollar amount on that within your system? Is that something you've thought about?
Gabe Brown, when I was up there visiting, and he farms 5 miles 5 miles east of Bismarck, North Dakota, on 17 inches of annual rainfall. They did some extensive testing with, I think, with Mandan Soil Test Lab there, and some others, but they just on the economics of grazing, where they grazed a year, they netted anywhere from 100 to, it was over 300 and some dollars annually. This was above cost. This included the land costs. But now, you know, their land costs up there, you know, rental is like $35 an acre. And that struck me pretty hard, you know, but, you know, and they have a shorter growing season, so that's why, you know, they pulled it out. You know, they did graze cropping before I just called it graze cropping down here just so my neighbors would figure out what, you know, would stop bugging me or something. I don't know, I can't. But if you own the livestock, and the cattle prices don't go to hell, you can easily net above $100 an acre. Easily. And down here, that's something we can't do now. And we have a lot of guys who, well, not a lot of guys. I've been in contact with several guys who are saying, "Hey, we can't afford to grow wheat. We can't afford to, you know, this is dry country down here. You know, we can't grow soybeans and corn down here, and we really can't. You know, that organic." How to put it? The grazing of the organic instead of the harvesting of the grazing of the organic matter versus harvesting of the grain needs to be looked at. I can't, you know, you're up there, you get more rainfall, you have different climate. It's something you have to look at, though. You know, figure out what you need. I talked with Bob Torkelson. He was with CVA. He was a regional co-op. He sold grain on his farm up there in central Nebraska. They figured, you know, they had a pivot, and it had some roughness, he said, on it. And so they planted grass to it and just grazed because they figured they could make more money grazing unless corn got above $5 a bushel. So, you know, it's something you need to look at, and I can't tell you, you know, exactly, but and I don't think we can't make it come out by custom grazing for somebody. We have to own that livestock ourselves. And we have to go after this value added. The things that we do, you know, we have to get out of this mindset that we're commodity farmers. Consumers don't want commodities, they want specialized products. And I don't know. Do we have plans for managing in a drought on your non-irrigated land?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's kind of
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of just how it's sort of been. Some of our stuff, like our water infiltration, is good enough where, even when we have, like, we were in mild drought this last summer, weren't we?
Well, we had no rain from in June until late, I guess September. I guess we had a half inch of rain, but some places didn't get that. A few places around got more. We were in a strip that just didn't. This is our 8th year of substandard summer moisture, and it happens. It's part of farming. We'll have our good years, but right now we just have to plan for it, because you really don't want to have to buy alfalfa or something like that.
And as far as irrigated versus non-irrigated, we really do not run our pivots very often. I think we maybe ran them, each of them twice, or we ran pivots twice this last summer. So, I mean, it costs money to irrigate. So instead of trying to, it goes back to trying to make the soil better. Increase the water infiltration so you can use whatever you do get.
And Bruce, that is a great question. I've heard, Dr. Jim Garris say that livestock, when the ruminant animals expectorate, some of that stuff goes onto the ground and they inoculates the soil. I've heard people saying, well, it's maybe mechanically when they're grazing that it benefits the soil. We do know that when animals eat, if you take half of that off, half the top off, part of that root system is going to die. But it's going to be where that dies is very, very nutritious. And as that root goes back down, it's going into more nutritious stuff. And there's more. The soil microbiology is already there and it's supercharged there. So, I don't know. Dollar above ground is easy to measure. Yeah, that's true. Well, Tom, I'm glad that you feel that way. And you just have to, this is the 21st century. We can't continue to farm like we're in the last half of the 20th century. We just can't do that.
Yeah.
When we know better.
That's a great point by you, John, and it's a great comment from you, Tom, because that's what we try and do these Farminars for, is to let other people know that people are trying this elsewhere and that it can be done. And so John and Ian put their email address in the chat box earlier, and it sounds like they're happy to take your questions past tonight. So if you guys want to pick their brains, then shoot them an email. So that's what we want. That's what we want to see. That's why we do these Farminars. So and on that note, I think we've pretty much exhausted the questions here in the chat box. John and Ian, I don't know if you have any last parting wisdom to provide us before we sign off.
Have fun.
There we go. Cool. Well, yeah, John and Ian, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this for us and tuning in from over there in Kansas. We really do appreciate it. You guys are doing some cool stuff. Hope we can stay in touch with PFI, and we'll try and keep an eye on what you guys are doing. I guess one last minute plug here. I put another link in the chat box there to take a survey for practical farmers. Let us know what topics you want to hear about in the future. Thanks everybody for taking your Tuesday night to join us on this Farminar. We'll be doing next Tuesday night a very similar topic. It'll be from a couple people in Nebraska doing grazing cover crops and doing it profitably. So tune back in next Tuesday and we'll keep going. Thanks everyone.
Yep, thank you guys. Have a good one.